Hey everybody, dumwaldo from vaporsforum.com here, and I want to talk to you about the screwdriver from Trog. A lot of people are expecting me to say negative things about this, and obviously I do have some negative things to say about it. There are three problems that I have with the screwdriver that I can pinpoint. The very first problem is right here in the button. The button is problem twofold in my opinion, and first it's the design. The design is really bad because it's a very large, obtrusive button, and if you drop this, it's really easy to break that button off. And I can tell you that from experience because that was my first button, and I broke the tip right off by dropping this on the concrete. So I had to replace the button myself, and that's a second button that's in there. The button replacement wasn't that difficult, but I'll get into that at the end of the review. The other problem with where that button is how you push it. I see a lot of people hold the screwdriver like this and push the button with their pinky. For me, that's a really uncomfortable and unnatural motion. When I do that, right through here, I end up getting a cramp about an hour or so after I start doing that. So I don't like the position of the button either. The only way that I can really get this to work well for me is to turn it around and squeeze the device into my hand like that. So that's the grip that I choose to use with it, somewhat like a pipe grip. The performance is about what you would expect off of a 901 or 4075 atomizer. I really don't have any complaints about that. That's about average with what I expect from a brand new charged 901 battery. The battery performance will last a little bit longer with this because it's a larger battery, but I don't know how much of a difference that really makes. The next problem I have with it is the atomizer connection. For starters, the air hole is exposed, and if you flood the atomizer, juice can come out the air hole, and when it comes out the air hole, it runs down and it gets down on the body of the screwdriver itself. I don't know what it is. I think it's aluminum, but I gotta tell you, when it gets that liquid on the screwdriver, it just seems like it takes forever to get it cleaned off. It'll retain this slick feeling for a long time, where I have to wipe it 2, 3, and 4 times to get the juice off of it. There's also very little tolerance, very little clearance within the connection itself. The center post is located very close to the outer threaded rod. The outer threaded rod is located really close to the housing. When I do flood an atomizer and I get juice in there, cleaning it out is really difficult. I have to take a tissue and I twist up the corner of it, and I have to stick it in there really very carefully, detail it, and it's just very generally difficult to get all of the juice back out of there. So even though it's a recessed atomizer connection, it doesn't really serve the good purpose that a recess should serve in becoming a retaining wall. So I don't care for the atomizer connection either. And just now, I have a very wet atomizer, and screwing it on there, a little liquid came out, and it just ran down it, and the whole thing's going to feel slick now. Performance-wise, it's a 901. That brings me to my last problem with the screwdriver, and the last problem is the price point on this bad boy. This thing sells for $160. Now, there's a lot of mods out now. Back when this first came out, I can understand him charging that kind of a price. In the competitive market that there is now, I don't see this selling for $160, especially not at 3.7 volts. The only way I find my screwdriver to be usable is if I use this right here. This is an extender sleeve that was loaned to me by Cisco. And what you do with this is, you take the screwdriver apart, and you take that little 3.7 volt unprotected battery that Trog includes with it, toss that thing over on the side. You don't need that anymore. Put the extender sleeve on, drop in a couple of CR2 batteries, and that becomes a worthwhile PV. This is what Trog needs to include with every screwdriver sold today, and these things need to run on 6 volts, because at 6 volts it's really a much better performing PV. You can see it's a much denser, much thicker vapor that it produces. The vapor is much warmer. When it goes down, it gives a better throat hit, and it performs so much better than a regular e-cigarette. So if you have the capacity to make one of these, if you can possibly convince Cisco to make you one, good luck. He won't make me one. That's what needs to be done. The screwdriver, the way it is, I can't really recommend. If it had the extender and the option to run at 6 volts, it would be a decent device. Now, I usually take my stuff apart, and I usually do it at the beginning, but there's one point about this that I need to take apart that's a little bit difficult to put back together, so I waited till the end. There's the tip piece from the screwdriver where you connection, and inside there's a spring that sits on top of what looks like a circuit board. But it's just a piece of board that's pressed in there, maybe glued in with something. I'm not exactly sure how it's held in there, but it doesn't seem to come out. It doesn't hold any circuitry. It's not a protection board. It's just a piece of circuit board with a spring attached and a hole with a wire running through the hole. That brings the positive contact through. Now, I told you before I broke my button, so I wanted to show you how the button comes apart on this thing. The first part is you just take the button and you just pull it right off. That part right there comes off, and there's a little pointed nub button underneath. I also have a red cap so I can change that at will. The next thing you're going to need is inside there, there's a little hole that you can just kind of make out. Well, I can't really get the angle right. I'm retarded. And what you need is you need a pointed tool. This is a desoldering tool that comes with just about every cheap soldering iron that's sold today. And it has a pointed end to it. You can use a regular awl, but I find that the desoldering tool with the angled tip gives you a really good push in there. Now you get it inside, and there's a little hole in the fitting, and you just fit the tip into there, and you just twist it out of there. Because what the button is in is a threaded piece that's inside of the body. Now, if you think getting this apart looks like a pain in the ass, you can just imagine what a pain in the ass it is getting it back together again. And there it goes. That is the switch assembly. Now these switches are just cheap little $2 switches from Radio Shack, so it's real easy to get another one and replace it yourself. But what you need to do is, you need to take the two connectors. Usually these things have a pair of connectors sticking up, one on each side that stick up. But for the screwdriver switch, you fold one of those connectors down to the side, and you take a small piece of wire and you solder it into the housing on the switch. Let me take this part apart too, because this is the nut that comes with the switch, and that's actually part of the screwdriver body itself, which is just a hole. And you can see on the front there's a little tiny hole up at the top. That's where the tool inserts to spin it, the threads threading into the screwdriver. So you take a small piece of wire and solder it to the body of the side of the screwdriver, the switch. That's going to make contact with the piece that I just showed you, which screws into the body, which makes contact with that to carry the negative. To make the battery connector, one of the contacts is just folded down, but it's folded down with a little plastic washer around it. Now my camera's kind of crappy, so I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this or not. But there's a little plastic washer that's around that, and it's folded down, and that creates the contact point for the battery. So there you have it, my review of the screwdriver. If you have a machine shop and you can make yourself an extending sleeve to use it at 6 volt, it's worthwhile. If you can't, it's just an overpriced electronic cigarette, and there's much better values out there. Vaporsforum.com. Peace.